Thank God the next 2 episodes of Evangelion aren't depressing, because if they were, I probably would wind up shooting myself, because I just replayed The Last of Us and I forgot how powerful and sad that ending is. Hello, N6 of YouTube, it's Adam Noyce from Adam Noyce, and welcome to the next episode of Congratulations, the Neon Genesis Evangelion Retrospective. Today we're going to be talking about Episode 5, also known as Rei I. I actually very much enjoy this episode because this is the first episode we really get a glimpse at who Rei is. Granted, she has been in other episodes previous, but this is the first time we actually get to see some of her character. I mean, before she's just kind of been standing there in the background, like in the first episode, or she just says Shinji we're needed, but now we actually get some of her character, and I guess I'll just start off with her because she definitely has the most to talk about. Right from the get-go, we know that she has no past, which is a major foreshadow to what she actually winds up being, but I will get into that when we discover that. I think it's in episode 23. Or that if she had a past, it's been erased, and that's what Ritsuko and Masato have discovered. Ritsuko also stated that her mind is disturbed, which explains why she's so emotionless. And she's also different from all the other people. If you look at her, she's the only one that doesn't actually have somewhat normal hair and somewhat normal eyes. Unlike a lot of animes where we have crazy hair and crazy eye designs and stuff like that, something that's really cool about the animation in Evangelion, and even the rebuilds, is that stuff looks pretty normal for the most part. All the characters have, normal designs. They have normal, more realistic, more human-looking designs, more down-to-earth designs. Rei and Kaoru are the only two characters that have this weird kind of almost stereotypical anime kind of designs, where their eyes are a funky color and their hair's a different color. In this case, their hair's gray. Some people say it's blue, but I think it's gray. And their eyes are red, kind of like vampires, but these people are more cool than vampires. But that's just an interesting side note that I've noticed. During the scene where Shinji's looking up at her, which I'll talk about that a little later, it's interesting to note that she doesn't swim. She's in her swimming trunks, but she doesn't swim. She just sits on the sidelines in somewhat of a fetal position. Her knees are up in her face. She has her arms wrapped around her knees and stuff like that. Almost like she's sitting down, but she's in the fetal position, if you know what I mean. If you watch the episode, you definitely know what I'm talking about. But she's sitting there, right? And while everyone else is having fun looking at, oh, look at all the boys, she's just sitting there, right? Away from everybody else, which I think when we get into Shinji, we'll explain why Shinji's kind of interested in her. Not like attraction-wise, but he's just curious about her, kind of like how Toji is towards Shinji, that kind of way. And you also notice right there that she is very backwards. She's very intrusive, just like Shinji, so I think there's something there as well. And then I love it how when Shinji goes to see her, in her room to give her this new pass, this new pass that Ritsuko gave to Shinji to give to Rei, because her other one was outdated or something like that, so she couldn't get into Nerve. When Shinji goes to seize her, her room is a complete and total mess. Almost like she has no cares at all. There's bloody rags all over the ground. It's a fucking pigsty, and Ritsuko kind of foreshadows this when she says, Yeah, if you mean by living. When Shinji asks where does she live, and she kind of laughs and says, yeah, it depends on your definition of living. Then it cuts to that and you understand why. But it's also interesting to note that she has Gendo's glasses. The glasses are on a table, which we'll get into a little later when I talk about the specific scene where that becomes more important. As well, and this I noticed on my first viewing, the stuff that is on her side table. There's like a side drawer full of where all of her clothing is, I think. I think that's where it's on. If you look at what's on it, there's plasma there, and there's a lot of other stuff. Meaning that she has some major health problems. Because if you look at how they're positioned and how they're laid, they look like they're used awful frequently. And if you look at that, you know that she has some major health problems. Now, when we discover why she has health problems, I'll explain it more then. There's also another episode where Asuka, when we finally meet Asuka, comes up to her, and Rei is reading this book. If you look what's in the book, it just foreshadows what's going on even more with the plasma and with that stuff that's on the table, but we'll get into that when the time comes. And I love how when Shinji falls on her, right, that really awkward scene where Shinji falls on her and totally gets to second base without even realizing it, Rei just is looking at her, and this just goes into just how intrusive she is and just how much she really kind of doesn't care about anybody else other than Gendo. She just goes, "Could you get off of me, please?" Just ever so politely, and Shinji of course does it, and Shinji kind of freaks out because unlike, and this is just a great kind of, not parallel, but if you kind of understand where I'm meaning, how they contrast each other, Shinji is very emotional, and basically every decision he's going to make from this point on are based on his emotions, while Rei is very, very logical. You know, she's kind of like the McCoy-Spock kind of thing from Star Trek, where McCoy thought with emotions and didn't really look at logic, didn't always think logic was the best answer, while Spock just looked at logic no matter what. It's kind of like that. And I like it. And the only scene that we really get where she gets any emotions at all is when she hits Shinji. The rest of the time she's very monotone, very, like, no facial expressions at all, which I find really creepy. The only time we actually see her legitly get angry, and I can tell she is angry, is when she hits Shinji. Now that's interesting, because the only other time besides that, and even this can kind of counter that, is when she's with Gendo. When she's with Gendo, she smiles, she looks like a normal human being. And even here, Gendo is the subject that they're talking about. She asks, "Don't you trust your father?" And Shinji goes, "Of course not, he abandoned me." She turns around, gets angry, and hits Shinji. That's so interesting, because there's something going on between her and Gendo, and we haven't figured it out yet, but when we do, it makes a lot of sense. They kind of they foreshadow it a lot with a certain scene that I'm going to get to when we talk to Shinji in here, but it's not blatantly outright said. And what really happens here really fits more with Shinji, so I'm going to get into it more when we talk about him. But that was just a really interesting note to really talk about Rei. Also, to be honest, it is to be expected that Shinji wouldn't trust his dad. To me, that makes a lot of sense. But I'm not sure if Rei really knows that, because Rei really has had the love from Gendo that Shinji never had. And so she only sees the good side of Gendo, while Shinji only sees the bad. So again, it's just some weird combination of both of them are on the same side of the coin kind of deal. Both of them are on the same coin, but on the different side of that coin, if you understand what I mean here. And I find that interesting. I mean, she clearly thinks about Gendo a lot. Clearly Gendo's like that one person that's always on Rei's mind. And every time she's thinking about him, she will smile or she will show some kind of emotion. This is literally the only time, and I mean, I said this before, but I'm just going to drive the point home here. Gendo is the only time Rei will ever show emotions. I mean, sure, her character grows as the show progresses, which I find amazing, but the only time that we really see Rei acting like a fucking human being is when she's thinking of Gendo. And also, it's also interesting to note that Gendo's glasses she clearly always takes Gendo's glasses with her. Alright, they're in her room, and then when she's test piloting the Eva Unit 0, again, after its miserable failure the first time, it's interesting to know that she looks over and you see that she's hung them up on her like cockpit thingy McJigger. She's hung them up, so clearly she looks at those as like almost like a good luck charm, which is extremely human considering the fact that Hideki Anno made Rei actually be somewhat of a spoof of other anime characters. You know, the stereotypical emotionless character that's kind of become a stereotype in anime. Rei was kind of supposed to be that kind of spoof. Or she was supposed to make fun of those, but at the same time she does shit like this where she hangs up the glasses and she has these extremely human moments that I can't help but think, was that really what Hideki Anno wanted to do? You could possibly argue, and quite frankly I'd understand it too, that he just wanted to add some character to Rei at this point because he didn't want it to be overly blatant that she's a spoof. Oh, the irony that Rei wound up becoming the staple of the emotionless character. But, you know, that's just something funny. I mean, something in the previous episode was the whole thing with Shinji running away, is how whenever something bad happens to you and you don't know how to deal with it, you run away, you seclude yourself. And Hideki Anno likes to blow it over the top. He likes to blatantly throw it at your face. I mean, just wait until we get into the more religious symbolism. So why would he throw in a hidden touch like this is beyond me. And it sounds like I'm complaining, but I'm not. It just intrigues me. Just like the rest of this goddamn show. It just really intrigues me. And it's stuff like this that keeps me coming back to Evangelion. It keeps me wanting to rewatch it. It keeps me on my toes when watching it, that this isn't just a mindless mech show. It's not. There's a lot of shit that build on top of each other throughout this show. No matter what you say, no matter if you like it or not, you can't argue that this shit is deep. And brings up the Evangelion meme, too deep for you. But yeah, I'm sorry, that's just what keeps me coming back to the show. Let's talk about Shinji. And what I like about this is a great progression from the previous episode with his character. Because right now he looks very curious. He's now officially back with Nerve. He's actually moving around with Masato quite a bit. I'm not sure if Masato was actually just giving him a tour of Nerve HQ or not. But he's with Masato, and I actually take it that he kind of wants to be with Masato because he's asking all these questions. He's actually kind of acting like he's an okay kid, and I like that. That's a great progression, because he's exploring Nerve HQ, and I like that. He also notices that Gendo's hands are burned, and of course he finds out why, and his hatred for Gendo grows. I'm not sure if it's really hatred. I wrote down hatred in my notes. I'm pretty sure that's kind of a strong word, but his distaste for his dad kind of grows. When you find out why, which I'm going to get into when I get into the likes about this video, because really there's just so many character moments in that opening scene in this episode that I'm just going to talk about as a whole. But when we discover why Gendo has the burnt hands, and when Shinji finds out why, it really drives, kind of like, it hits the nail on the head for him. It's like, why does my dad love her way more than he loves me, his own flesh and blood, which is interesting. And I honestly think he's kind of fascinated with Rei. One, because she's very intrusive, I have already said that before, but two, and I think most importantly, he's fascinated with Rei because he wants to know why his dad likes her more than he likes him. And I want to know why, and to be honest, Shinji wants to know why, and me as the audience I wanted to know why too, which I loved. I absolutely fucking loved. The fact that this show was able to grab me in such a way, I wanted to know what Shinji wanted to know. And that's good. To me, that's great writing. That's fantastic writing. If I'm able to be sucked into it, just like the characters, and I love it. Absolutely love it. And it's also interesting to note that he's watching Rei during the pool scene, and Rei kind of glances at him, and his friends are like, "Oh, do you got the hots for Rei?" and stuff like that, because she's the other pilot. And Shinji is legit. He kind of freaks out at first, but he panics. He's like, "No, it's nothing like that." And to be honest, I don't think he is attracted to Rei at all. I really honestly don't. I know that some people put the pairing together, but when you find out what Rei is, it just disturbs me beyond belief that people would put those two pairs together. However, I will not lie that Shinji isn't fascinated with her. He is. He wants to know who she is. He wants to know more about her. And I think it's for pure selfish reasons, which again goes into why I like a lot of the characters in this show, is because they are so human. I'm a Smithian, an Adam Smithian. Adam Smith believes that everything that we do as human beings, in the end, is for our own purpose. It's very selfish in that way. In fact, Ayn Rand's The Virtues of Selfishness is what I consider to be one of my Bibles. Okay? And I know that sounds terrible, but I think there are some really good merits to selfishness. I really do. And I believe that everything every human being does, in the end, is for their own self-interest. And I think that's the reason why Shinji wants to know Rei, is because he sees this as kind of his opportunity to kind of get with his dad, to kind of not so much amend, but kind of breach some of the gaps that are there between Shinji and his father. And it's also cool to see that Shinji, despite what a lot of critics say, is actually building a friendship with his friends. Like, he's hanging out with Toji and, oh shit, what's his name? I totally forgot his name, flipping back. Kensuke, thank you. Kensuke, thank you, notes. God, I can't believe I just had a brain fucking fart right there. Anyways, it's interesting to note that Shinji's actually becoming good friends with them. They're hanging out, they're talking, they're laughing, they're running together. You know, this is what I expect to see out of a 14-year-old kid. You know, he's actually starting to act like his age. And that's such a cool progression. That's such a good progression from the last episode, where he was all inside and very quiet. In fact, he actually hardly talks at all. I know I said this before, but I just want to say it again here. He actually hardly talks at all in that episode, and here he's actually talking quite a bit. He's actually opening up to Ritsuko, Misato, and especially Toji and Kensuke, and that's a wonderful progression. A wonderful progression, and it works. You know, some people could say that it's clunky from the last episode to this episode. There should be just like an episode in between. However, I think it works really good, especially when later episodes come by and everything just comes crashing down on Shinji. It just makes you feel even worse for him. You know, he's kind of like the Zuko character, where Zuko in Avatar: The Last Airbender, you wanted everything thrown at him that could possibly make him worse, that could make his situation worse. Just because you know at the end he's going to climb out, he's going to make the right decision, and he's going to become a better person because of it. That's what Shinji is. And believe it or not, at the end of Evangelion, that's what happens. I know a lot of people don't see it, but hopefully when I actually talk about it, you'll understand it a little bit more. It is complicated as all fuck, but I know I'm right. I know it sounds really arrogant, but I know I'm right. So if you just stick throughout the rest of the friggin' series here, and finally when I get to end of Eva, you guys will hopefully look at the ending a little bit better. And I'm not talking about the show's ending, I'm talking about the end of Eva. And then it's also interesting to know, just to add some more human elements to Shinji, is that when he's in the cockpit of Eva Unit 01, and he sees Gendo and Rei together, and Gendo's almost looking like he's joking with Rei, because this is the first time we ever really see Gendo. Gendo's kind of like smiled arrogantly, like he's like, yeah, fucking right, I'm right. But this is the first time where we've seen Gendo kind of act like a human being in this case. And Rei is the same way. Rei is actually smiling. She looks like she's happy to see Gendo. Gendo looks like he's happy to see Rei. And Shinji is just watching this, and I couldn't help but get a vibe from... There's a scene on 2001: A Space Odyssey where Dave and the other dude go into one of the escape pods and shut off all the audio and are speaking, and Hal is watching them through the window. It feels very much like that, because the only thing Shinji can understand is that their lips are moving and that they're talking, just like Hal did, which just makes me understand why people say Hideki Anno is the Stanley Kubrick of anime even more. I just found that a really cool parallel, and even their shots similarly. I'm actually 90% sure that was a little bit paying homage. Clearly Hideki Anno is a fan of Stanley Kubrick. Ritsuko, there isn't too much to talk about Ritsuko, but Ritsuko does play a vital role in this. During the opening scene, she always watches Gendo from afar, and she looks like she's jealous, which is foreshadowed to the relationship that we discover that her and Gendo have. But we'll get into that when it's more prevalent in another episode. It's also interesting to note that when in the opening scene, when the Eva Unit 00 is going apeshit, is going berserk and punching the wall, and Gendo's just standing right there, she's begging Gendo to get back. She's not like, Gendo, you need to get back. She's like, Gendo, oh my god, Gendo, get back, get back, get back. She's clearly worried about him. And that's interesting. That's interesting to note. There's also a great friendship moment between her and Misato in this one, and it makes me laugh quite a bit. And even actually her and Shinji, where she goes over to Misato's house, and they're eating, and she tries to eat Misato's food, and she gags because it's just that bad. And Pen, cute little poor little Pen won't even eat it. Poor penguin. And she's like, oh, only Misato would make something already pre-made taste this bad. That's such a good character moment for really all three of the characters at the same time, because even at this point it's kind of foreshadowing that Shinji's actually good at what he does in terms of cleaning and cooking, which is kind of hilarious. And Misato is absolutely terrible at it. It's really funny. Really funny. It's a great natural character moment just to show you the friendship between Misato and Ritsuko. And I still think the feeling that Ritsuko's a little bit jealous of Misato because she can always keep an upbeat mind even here is kind of prevalent. It is prevalent here, but you can tell that they're friends. And that's what I like. Despite this jealousy thing going on, they're still really close friends. And I like that, and I like it a lot. Misato. Same kind of goes for her. When she learns about the angel DNA, she is still selfish. And that's something that I like about Misato, is that she too is very selfish. She doesn't want to be, but she just naturally is. When she learns that they have the readings of the angel DNA, she immediately pushes Shinji out of the way, right? And then she looks at this computer screen while Shinji is just in the background like, oh my god, I gotta see what's going on, oh my god. And she's just sitting there, just completely ignoring him. And that's an interesting note. I just kind of like that. It's a little tiny character moment like that that I really like, and what I actually like about the show. There's little shit like that throughout the entire thing that just kind of adds sprinkles on the top of your ice cream. I love it. I love how she actually invites Ritsuko over for dinner. Just, again, that just goes into friendship thing, that I kind of already tapped into that when I was talking about Ritsuko, so that's all I really have to say about that. And then, of course, she doesn't cook. She can't cook for shit. That's so funny. Really not much to talk about with Misato in this episode, but just a little kind of shit that we get. Again, it's like the sprinkles on top of the ice cream. It works so well. It makes me laugh. Gendo, on the other hand, there actually is quite a bit to say about him, despite how little he is in this episode. In the opening scene, when the test fails, he is the first one to run out there and rescue Rei. Immediately, I was like, dude, he's treating her better than he's treating his son. Immediately, which just made me even more intrigued in what this asshole is like. You know, that's just fantastic writing. Fantastic. There's also, he screams when she's ejected from Unit 0. He's like, Rei! And he's panicking the fact that she was forcefully ejected, which will do a shit ton of damage to her body. And he's freaking out, he's panicking, he's actually showing us that he's human. He's not just a robot, he's not just a machine that wants to win. He's human. And I think that's just one of the things that makes me like Gendo so much as a character, is that he is like that. He does have these human moments that prove to you that he's not just that asshole, he's not just the leader of Nerve, he's not just a figure. He is a human being, and I like that. And he even goes as far as to burn his own hands just to save Rei. Gendo wouldn't be caught dead doing that for his son. Why Rei? Now, of course, we find out later, and I will definitely talk about it when that episode arrives. And then, of course, he's also very relieved. In fact, his shoulders drop when he sees Rei is flying, and he looks so relieved, but what's funny is what he says is, I see. And he almost kind of has to pull back his emotions because he's already let them flood out enough, and he pulls them back at that moment, right after he drops his shoulders, and suddenly that Gendo, that computer-style Gendo is back. That's really interesting to note. What I liked about this episode, a little reference thing happens on this. The 601 warning that pops up when Unit 0 fails in the opening scene is a clear reference to the Andromeda strain made in the 1970s. That's a clear reference, and I find that hilarious. I also like how there's not much of a difference between us and the angels, but yet we cannot live together. That's pretty much said right from the get-go. Now, we don't know why yet, and I will definitely talk about that later, but we cannot live together, and that's so interesting because we are so close, but yet we can't live together. I also love the 5th angel's slow appearance. Oh, that's so cool. It's very ominous, and its design is really cool because I was expecting it to look like a normal kaiju, and this looks really cool. This looks like nothing I've ever seen before, and I give it props for that originality. And actually the scene where it's approaching, there's this one shot where you see like a dot flying way in the background, just slowly coming towards the screen, right? And it reminds me a lot of some of the shots from Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster, where you see Ghidra flying in the background, way in the background as it's approaching, forgot what city he destroys. Sorry, Andres, please tell me. Please tell me later, because I know this is that's your favorite Godzilla movie, and I apologize. But you see him flying in the background towards you, and it just reminded me of that. It gave me that kind of Ghidra the Three-Headed Monster vibe, and I really like it. This episode ends with a great fucking cliffhanger. Oh my god, you just hear Shinji screaming bloody murder because he's getting hurt by this thing, and suddenly it's zoom in on the side, it goes, Shinji! And then all of a sudden it just cuts to black and says to be continued. I love that cliffhanger. Oh my god, it just kept me on the edge of the seat and made me so excited to watch the next episode. I felt like a kid in a candy store. The opening scene with Gendo and Rei, I've already kind of talked about that quite a bit, where Gendo and Rei were like, oh my god, Rei looks at Gendo like a father, Gendo looks at Rei like the daughter he's never had, or whatever their relationship is. Clearly, Gendo puts more emphasis on Rei than he does his own son. It also really foreshadows the relationship between Ritsuko and Gendo at the same time, because even here, Ritsuko is looking down at Gendo rescuing Rei, and even she looks jealous, and she has a knowing eye, meaning that she knows that there's something up with Rei. And I want to know more. Even when I was first watching this, I wanted to know more, which I applaud in terms of the writing of the show. And when we discover what she knows, I'm definitely going to talk about it then, but when we discover why it knows, it kind of ties up this relationship in a nice, neat little bow. It's a really fucked up and disturbing little bow, but it makes sense. And it also showed me right here, because why is that mech going berserk? Why? And I had that question before on the first episode, like why, or on the second episode, why is this thing going berserk? And this really drove home that these are not normal mechs. Even the scene with the eyeball thingy looking back on Shinji at the ending of the second episode. What the hell are these things? And I mean, I know what they are. Trust me, I know what they are, and I'll talk about it when we find out what they are. It made me want to know, what are these things? I thought they were just mechs. I thought these were just giant robots that a kid was supposed to get in and pilot. I thought these are like Pacific Rim style mechs. No, there's something going on here that makes these things, to be honest, alive. And I want to know more. Anyways, that concludes this episode. I hope you enjoyed it. Stay tuned for episode 6, which is totally BA. And, sayonara.